Hello and welcome to this third in a series of 4 summer seminars on new work in art conservation, organized by the Edith O'Donnell Institute of Art History at the University of Texas at Dallas. I'm Sarah Kozlowski, Associate Director of the O'Donnell Institute and Director of the Center for the Art and Architectural History of Port Cities, which is housed at the Museo di Capodimonte. Over the past 2 weeks, we've welcomed colleagues from the Capodimonte in Naples and from the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. Today, we move closer to home and from painting and glass to photography. We're delighted to welcome 2 colleagues from the Amon Carter Museum of American Art in Fort Worth, Fernanda Valverde, Conservator of Photographs, and Ariadna Rodriguez Corte, Fellow in Photography Conservation. Their presentation introduces Ariadna's new research on the work of photographer Laura Gilpin, whose archive is held at the Amon Carter. And I have the pleasure now of introducing each of them in turn. Fernanda Valverde is Conservator of Photographs at the Amon Carter Museum of American Art in Fort Worth. She holds a BS in Conservation of Cultural Heritage from the National School of Conservation in Mexico City and an MS from the Rochester Institute of Technology. In Rochester, she was a fellow of the Advanced Residency Program in Photograph Conservation, which was a program offered by the George Eastman Museum and the Image Permanence Institute at Rochester Institute of Technology. Before joining the Amon Carter, she was chair of 2 programs at the National School of Conservation in Mexico City, the International Postgraduate Program in Photograph Conservation and the Masters in Conservation of Documentary Heritage. In Mexico City, she also served as a conservation consultant for the National Archives of Mexico and the National Library of History and Anthropology. Ariadna Rodriguez Corte is Fellow in Photograph Conservation at the Amon Carter Museum of American Art in Fort Worth. She studied conservation at the National School of Conservation in Mexico City, like Fernanda, and has held positions at the National Archives of Mexico and the National Direction of Cultural Heritage Conservation. She's also carried out work for the Frida Kahlo Museum and the National Library of Mexico. At the Amon Carter, Ariadna's research has focused on the work of photographer Laura Gilpin, looking in particular at Gilpin's technical and creative processes, as well as connections between negatives, prints, and documents held in the Gilpin archive at the Amon Carter. It's on that work that Ariadna and Fernanda will present today. The talk is entitled Laura Gilpin's Pueblo, a journey into one of the archive collections of the Amon Carter Museum of American Art. Welcome, Ariadna and Fernanda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah. And we are delighted to be here today and would like to thank you, of course, the Edith O'Donnell Institute and of course, the Amon Carter Museum of American Art, where we work. Well, this presentation will provide an insight into the research project of the current fellow in photograph conservation, Ariadna. She is interested in connecting the different testimonial and visual resources of Laura Gilpin's archive collection, such as negatives, prints, documents, preserved at the Amon Carter Museum of American Art, to explore the photographer's technical and creative processes employed to produce her book, The Pueblos, a camera chronicle. The transformation of the photographer's technique and style during the wide period that she worked on this book, from 1921 to 1940, will be illustrated in this presentation with examples from the Carter's collection, which comprises over 20,000 prints and more than 27,000 negatives and transparencies. So now it's your turn, Ariadna.
Okay. Well, Laura Gilpin became well known for her photographs of Native Americans, particularly the Navajo and the Pueblos peoples. Her vast production, including books, booklets, art photographs, and lantern slides of the Southwest, provide an insight into the landscape, traditions, and culture of Native Americans of this region. She was born in 1891 in Austin Bluffs, Colorado, and began taking photographs as a child with a Brownie camera she received as a gift when she was 12 years old, and experimented the autochrome process before studying photography at the Clarence H. White School in New York from 1916 to 1917, where she started a career between artistic and commercial photography. She initially employed the pictorialist photographic processes and techniques she learned in New York, but she later experimented with many other photographic processes as they became available at her time. The variety of photographic processes she employed are represented in the Gilpin collections of the Amon Carter Museum of American Art, which includes autochromes, glass plate negatives, gelatin silver prints, different types of photographic papers, including Agfa Gebalux, platinum and palladium, platinum gum, photogravures, cellulose nitrate sheet film negatives, cellulose acetate sheet film negatives, color slides, color dye imbibition, and color dye copy. Parallel to her career as an art photographer, Gilpin pursued her personal interest for the Southwest landscape and peoples, and found a commercial output of her work through her publications and photobooks. The Pueblos, a Camera Chronicle, Temples in Yucatan, the Rio Grande, River of Destiny, and the Enduring Navajos. The book, The Pueblos, a Camera Chronicle, condenses 2 decades between 1921 and 1940 of Gilpin's work in Colorado, Nuevo Mexico, and Arizona. The prints she chose for this book denote her technical and stylistic transition from pictorialist to straight photography. They also show the evolution on her perception and relationship with indigenous culture and people. It was the culmination of Gilpin's long-desired project of producing a book written, illustrated, and designed by her. The opportunity came in 1940 with an offer from Walter Fries, editor at Hastings House in New York, who was interested in publishing a photographic book of the Southwest. The book comprises images she had captured during several trips and used for booklets, lantern slides, and artistic prints. In her book, Laura Gilpin, An Enduring Grace, Sandwise lists 4 trips across the region in 1924, 1926, 1930, and 1937. The yellow marks on this map indicate the places she was working. This is an image of the nitrate negative she used for the book. As all other negative images in this presentation, this one is displayed as a positive image to facilitate its interpretation. The book has 77 images. We found the negatives of 49 of them. The total numbers are 72 negatives and transparencies and 137 prints. Here we are going to present the most interesting of them. The printing technique used to reproduce the images in the book, sheet-fed rotogravure, provided the quality of an art book, but at an affordable price for the commercial market. It also resembles the aesthetic qualities of photogravure, a photomechanical process widely employed by pictorialist photographers. Laura Gilpin worked with soft focus, Spruce, Victorial, and Pinkham and Smith lenses, but she slowly adopted a sharper approach during the 1920s. The Spruce lens shown here belonged to Spruce himself, not to Gilpin, but illustrates the structure of soft focus lenses, a simple lens with the diaphragm on the front. Regarding the cameras, Gilpin used a large landscape 8x10 camera for most of her projects, despite the challenges of using this format. She also used other formats, such as the 5x7 and 3¼ by 4¼ cameras you see here. Also, at the Clarence White School, she used pictorialist printing process, such as the platinotype and photogravure. She progressively abandoned the pictorial style and techniques and embraced straight photography. This was not a drastic change in her career. She used both techniques and styles during the 1920s, as can be noticed in the book. These photographs, Hymn to the Sun and the one shown on the next slides, Girl Grinding Corn, were captured in 1925 with a soft focus lens, even though she had already used a straight lens a year before. As can be observed here, the sheet-fed rotogravure reproduced the matte surface quality, grain, and velvety texture of the photogravure and platinum print processes. Laura Gilpin generally avoided the hand manipulation of the negative and print that was common in pictorialist photography. This 3¼ by 4¼ nitrate negative used for the book is an exception. She blocked a large area of the image with black tape to highlight the detail of the three dancers. Another technical change after 1924 was the use of cellulose nitrate sheet film instead of glass plates. This nitrate film negative of her 1924 trip to Mesa Verde, Colorado, shows details which indicate it was duplicated from an original 4x5 glass plate negative. The first image you see corresponds to the interpositive. The second one is the nitrate negative. A platinum print created from this negative is third. And the fourth one is the rotogravure print in the book. Exploring Laura Gilpin's archive and collections allows us to compare other prints, gelatin silver and platinum, obtained from the same nitrate negative you saw in the previous slide, and even a platinum print from the original 4x5 glass plate negative. These prints do not only vary in size and photographic process, but sometimes in their condition or state of deterioration. This is another nitrate negative of the same trip to Mesa Verde, in which we can observe the signs of the original glass plate negative that was used to produce this duplicate. such as the thickness of the plate, the chipped edges, and small losses. We were able to compare gelatin silver prints obtained from that negative, showing different degrees of fading and yellowing. Here again, you can see a platinum print obtained from the original 4x5 glass plate negative. This slide compares three different nitrate negatives obtained from the same 4x5 glass plate negative. The first two show the edge damage of the original glass plate negative. The third one is the same size as the other two, but in this one, Gilpin cropped the edges by slightly enlarging the image to remove the areas corresponding to the damaged edges of the original glass plate negative. The third duplicate negative mentioned in the last slide, the crop one, was used to print these two gelatin silver prints. The one on the left is faded. In this slide, we compare two platinum prints obtained from the original 4x5 glass plate negative with two obtained from the third, the crop one, duplicate negative. As we can see here, by 1929, Gilpin was already using cellulose nitrate film only and a large 8x10 format camera. By comparing the negative with the print in the book, we notice the slight cropping of the edges to bring the subject closer to the front in the print. In these two prints, the same negative, we can compare different cropping of the negative image as well different photographic processes. A platinum print on the left and a gelatin silver print on the right. These three different negatives of the broken flute cave provide us an insight into Gilpin's selection process for the book. The two upper images correspond to the camera negative and the print in the book. The three negatives of the bottom were captured in the same place but were not selected for the book. By comparing this negative with the print in the book, we notice the cropping of the image at the edges. A larger cropping was done at the right side to eliminate the defect on the negative due to flare. The defect or flare was also cropped in these three gelatin silver prints. A larger area on the left side of the image was cropped on the second one. The third one shows less cropping of the upper part, so the entire cloud can be seen. This is another 8x10 nitrate camera negative captured in 1938. More than a decade later, she started exploring the region. In this slide, we can compare two gelatin silver prints enlarged from the negative. The one on the right is signed in pencil on the mount and was cropped to bring the subject closer to the front. A slight defect on the left side of the negative, probably a fingerprint, was also removed by cropping the image. The colder or more neutral tonality of this print compared to the one next to it is due to the photographic paper she employed. Finally, in this slide, we can see other prints from the same negative on different photographic papers, including one we think is a work print, the third one, because the small defect on the negative, a white speck near the center of the image, was not retouched.
Okay, so to conclude this presentation, we can say that the size and scope of Laura Gilpin collections preserved at the Amon Carter Museum of American Art allow us to compare photographs produced during 2 decades of her work. And from this first approach to the collection, several questions were formulated. The first one relates to the cameras Gilpin used during this period, such as the 4x5 glass plate camera, which she may have used in 1924, and also the 8x10 camera she used later. The second question refers to the duplication of many of her glass plate negatives into nitrate sheet film, and the reason for doing this. Also, the reasons behind the various degrees of deterioration of some of her gelatin silver prints are worth investigating, as well as the type of photographic papers that she used. These questions, and maybe others, will be addressed as this research progresses in this year and in the next one. So with this, we finish our presentation. And of course, we want to thank you, the Amon Carter Museum of American Art, and our colleagues at the archive, Jonathan Prembling and Alison Olivares. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Fernanda and Ariadna, for a really rich presentation. And thank you also for agreeing to answer questions from our participants. Participants, if you would enter your questions in the chat so I can read them out. And I know that Ariadna and Fernanda will be happy to respond. As everyone's kind of thinking about their questions, I was struck by the kind of the wonderful sense of the materialities of individual negatives and prints and the variations between them and Gilpin's choices along the way. And this made me wonder, what do we know about the dynamics of the collaboration between Gilpin and her publisher to actually produce the book? I mean, what kind of latitude was she given to choose size and format and printing processes and layout and so on?
Well, I can just mention a few things. I think why so far, maybe Ariadna had read more about exactly this book, but I think quite a lot, because even the title, he had proposed a title of the story of the Southwest or something like that. And Laura Gilpin changed even, the title. And we think that the choice of a rotogravure might have been Laura's. But what do you think, Ariadna?
Well, what I know is that the proposal was about another region near Colorado, but she sent to the editor some of her previous work about the Southwest. So he decided to do it about that region in specific after that. And I think that was important, but because it was the personal project of Laura Gilpin's and her desire to do a book about that region. Yeah.
And I think about the technique. So far, we believe that it was her choice because she came from a pictorialist school of like tradition. So you can see that her first work was very much into the Clarence White school, such as printing. Most of her work was in platinum and photogravure. So we assume, or so far we think, we have to still like to dig into all her papers are there. But that rotogravure is, still like affordable price, but it has that feeling of materiality as a platinum print or as a photogravure. It has that texture, and we are sure that, well, we think that she chose the color of the ink because you can choose the color, that to resemble photogravure. So it must have been like her choice of that technique to keep like not only the image, but the object, the texture, the mattness, the velvety quality of the.
Yes. Even in a different printing process. Yeah.
Yes, but still keeping some resemblance of what she wanted to show, and which is after this book, then you can tell in other books it's more about the image you see in the book, but not the physical qualities of that image, not the atmosphere.
And even we know that she chose the color of the book binding, the decoration on it, and the design for the cover of the book. So
she chose it blue. She said it has to be blue.
Because the importance of the turquoise on the region.
Turquoise. The cover had to be, she said, turquoise blue, and also the designs of each, all the decorations she created.
So it really can be considered a kind of artist's book.
Yes.
Just as much as a publication.
More than what she was asked to produce a book, like to promote the tourism in the area, but she actually produced an art book.
Yeah. Wonderful. We have a question from Francesca Santamaria. She says, thank you for this wonderful presentation. I'm wondering what we know about her photos with people. Did she take posed photos? Did she use models? What was that dynamic? And I'm sure, well, I imagine that goes back to her kind of pictorialist training or method as well.
You can answer which ones are posed and which ones are not.
Yeah. Well, we had information about her trip in 1925 to Mesa Verde. And these are the two images, him to the sun and the girl grinding corn, which can go back there.
Sí. The focus ones, that one and that one.
Yeah. And this was a pigeon made for one of her friends there in Mesa Verde. And they hired some Navajo people to act a representation of the ancient Pueblo's life in the ruins of Mesa Verde. But after this, the way of Gilpin seeing the indigenous people change, because she realized that it wasn't the real people. It was just a representation of what we want to see about them.
Mhm.
And also, you know, she started with she grew up with a picture of Edward Curtis vanishing race on her living room or something. So she was, you know, kind of like inspired by that
Yeah.
view of vision of Edward Curtis. But of course, and at the beginning, yes, they was more like, you know, what we see from them. But I think one of the interesting things of Laura Gilpin and, you know, through her career is that she changed so much. So you start with seeing just someone, and then these people, this someone acquires like a face and a name and a relationship and an understanding of the real people.
Yeah.
Not just the you know, this dream about them.
Yeah.
And as opposed to that kind of part of the scenery, or yeah.
Yes, part of the see.
We have another great question from Carlos Flores, who in teaching children would like to be able to compare for them and demonstrate for them the differences between historical processes, and compare those historical photography processes with current digital photography. And so he asks if there are good resources for kind of training one's eye in the differences between different photographic techniques. I imagine that there are many books, but also resources online too.
Yeah.
Yes, let me think. Yes, we you know, the best resource we think is online is the graphic atlas online of the Image Permanence Institute. So that's a resource put together by many of our colleagues, and it shows, of course, you know, it's not the real object, but it describes the physical characteristic. And then if you look under magnification, and even has some videos that move the object, so you can see kind of like the gloss. And then there is another resource by a colleague called Gawin Weaver, who has also like a, you know, like an atlas of printing processes. So that's like a good resource online. But of course, the great, you know, that really what makes difference is when we show the real object. The real object.
Which you've done for my students at the Amon Carter, which
no, and you know, that is just to write to us, approach to the museum, and we can show them the real objects, not just as images. Yeah.
As actual things. Wonderful.
Yes.
I wonder if you might tell us a little bit more about the story of, I mean, the archives seems so rich and varied, and I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the story of their arrival at the Amon Carter, how they came to be at the Amon Carter.
When that's her bequest that that was agreed to, you know, to receive or to be given to the Amon Carter, because, you know, as Laura Gilpin, you know, approached her and, well, grew older, she had so many things, and I think it was the person who worked with, I forgot his name, who worked with her.
Marta.
Let me see.
The other one.
That, you know, the person who was, you know, helping her with her bequest and her will, right? You know, talk to her about, you know, the possibility of giving that to the Amon Carter. So that's how it arrived to the Carter, all of it.
And quite early on in the museum's history too, as
yes, I think he knew. I think he knew Mitch Wilder, who was the director at that time. You know, he was such a visionary of many things. very early visionary.
Yeah, they were close friends, I think so.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
So through that connection. Well, if there are no more questions, I wonder if we might end on what are the really big questions that you want to tackle next over the coming year.
You want to start?
The questions about
Mhm.
our further research.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well, we want to continue researching on her documents to find maybe some information about the cameras
Mhm.
and maybe about the glass plate negatives. And I think we also want to perform some analytical tests on the papers, the gelatin silver papers, and maybe also the platinum prints will be interesting to know the differences because she used several brands. And in the case of the platinum papers, she even hand coated some of them. So probably we will see very interesting differences between them. Yeah.
Yes, we have the analytical equipment at the Carter, which which would enable us to really get into deeper details of the materiality. Like, for example, as Ariadna was saying, when did she use certain type of platinum papers or silver journal, and then get deeply into the materiality from the technical point of view. Then the degree of deterioration, is some of her prints are really yellowed, as you see, and so to understand if that is, like the poor processing or the way she was mounting, the reasons behind, all different, how to say, degrees of deterioration we see in the collection. And then we can, we would like also to get deeper into the letters and papers and understand a little bit of what she thought about the processes. Is it just that what she found, or is it something, a material that she actually chose on purpose? Things like that.
Yeah.
Well, there seems to be seems to be such intentionality about choices of different processes and cropping and so on. Please, interrupted you.
Yes.
Yeah. It's what you can see comparing all these prints and negatives, the way she worked on her daily life, no?
See, and more getting to her mind through her papers, getting more a little bit of what she thought about her work, right? Or what he thought about her images.
Wonderful. Well, wonderful. Thank you both so much. And we look forward, I know all of us look forward to following your research as it unfolds over the next year. Thanks to all of you for joining us. And we hope that you'll join us for the fourth and final seminar in our series next week on Thursday, June 10th, when we welcome Elena Torok, Lance Lander, and Katie Provence from the Dallas Museum of Art. And they'll talk about preservation of time-based media art at the DMA. So we'll see you then. And thank you again so much, Ariadna and Fernanda.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to you.